All right, so we begin here with our big story. President Biden's sweeping new immigration policy. The president announcing details of his plan earlier today, and it could protect up to 500,000 undocumented immigrants from deportation. Take a listen.
Steps I'm taking today are overwhelmingly supported by the American people, no matter what the other team says. In fact, polls show over 70% of Americans support this effort to keep families together.
Well, the first executive action will allow spouses of U.S. citizens who've been living in the U.S. for over 10 years to remain in the country while applying for permanent resident status. The second executive action is aimed at making it easier for DACA recipients to get visas, which was enacted by former President Barack Obama some 12 years ago. It gave temporary protection to undocumented immigrants who were brought into the United States as minors. Of course, all of this comes just 2 weeks after the Biden administration announced it would restrict the number of migrants who can seek asylum in between those ports of entry. Joining me for more on this is our ABC News political contributor and NPR White House correspondent, Asma Khalid. Asma, we're so happy to have you with us today. And let's jump into one of these more obvious questions that a lot of people are asking right now, that they think potentially marrying an American citizen already gives you a pathway to citizenship. So, Asma, what is different about this legislation here?
So it really is a cumbersome process as it exists right now, in major part because if you are not in the country legally, you have to return to your home country. You'd have to go back, often across the border, and apply for a visa through proper channels. And so what the Biden administration says, what the president said himself today, is that this is about keeping families together so that in the process of applying through legal pathways, if you do marry a U.S. citizen, if you are already married to a U.S. citizen, you don't have to leave the country to go through this process. And, I misspoke there just a second ago, but I want to make clear this applies to people who are already married to U.S. citizens. It's not as if someone can go out today, marry someone who will be eligible for this program.
Right, almost as if of 2 days ago or something, right? And
correct.
Also, Asma, there's one Nevada senator who said that this would boost the economy in her state. She said there's over 100,000 citizens in Nevada that are living with at least one family member who's undocumented. So when you cover this, what are the stakes here in the election for some of these swing states that, as you know, have a lot of these mixed status households?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are no doubt economic consequences. You always hear about this. When you look at a state like Arizona, one of the interesting things is on all border policy, you talk to Republican politicians in the state of Arizona, they have a far more nuanced perspective, I think, of this issue because of the mixed economic benefits as well that improving access to immigration provides. But one thing I will say, Kena, is that it is undoubtedly, it's about politics too, I think, at the presidential level, everything. And I say that in part because you mentioned the DACA program that President Obama announced. That was 12 years ago. It was June, the summer ahead of President Obama's re-election bid. And he was really criticized leading up to that re-election bid for being a, quote, deporter-in-chief. The DACA program helped improve his potential odds with some of the Latino voters, some of the lackluster support he had, and it really turned things around for him. I think where President Biden's challenges is that the immigration picture is different and the politics of the country are different. So you saw 2 weeks ago, he put forth executive actions to really sort of crack down on the number of migrants who can enter the country unlawfully at the southern border. And all of this is mixed together because it's really one of the president's biggest political vulnerabilities.
It certainly is. So let's talk about the other side of it here, right? Former President Donald Trump's campaign responded today, Asma, saying that Biden is giving, quote, mass amnesty and citizenship to hundreds of thousands of illegals who he knows will ultimately vote for him. And it's important, of course, to note that these executive actions that we heard of today would allow recipients to apply for a green card this summer, but a green card holder then can't vote in the November election. But still, do you think that Trump here has a point, that this could be seen as a political grab for Latino votes ahead of the election?
I mean, I think the challenge for President Biden is that he really has to try to court multiple coalitions at the same time. Immigration has been a real sore spot for him, a real weakness, because a lot of Americans are not really pleased with the way that border policy is being handled right now. At the same time, there were a number of folks within President Biden's own party, on the left of his party, Latino voters, others, progressives, who were disappointed with his actions 2 weeks ago. And you heard in the president's comments today, he was trying to reach those voters and alleviate some of their concerns. And everything is about elections when you're just this close away from presidential election.
Absolutely. And so, Asma, if we can quickly, can you walk us through what we know right now about this policy for Dreamers specifically? We know DACA has been closed to new applicants for years. It's been heavily challenged in the courts. So what does the Biden administration then hope to do with this new executive action?
I mean, this executive action for Dreamers is sort of on the margins. As you mentioned, the DACA program itself has been held up in courts. But for existing DACA recipients, this plan is supposed to expedite the visa process to allow more people to work here. And as you mentioned earlier, in Nevada, some states, this is really crucial to helping increase the economic aspects, just make the economic engine flow more smoothly. It's something we hear in Nevada. It's something I myself have heard endless times out there in Arizona as well. I think there's a real nuanced aspect that voters in some of these areas where there are greater immigrant populations have about what needs to be done, not just border policy, but also pathways to legal citizenship. But, Kana, that's real hard to do on a congressional level here in Washington. And, you know, what we hear from this White House is they've seen no congressional action to date.
Right, and that has been highlighted time and time again. Asma Khalid, thank you so much for being with us today. I want to take our big story now to our panel. So joining us today is New York Magazine columnist Laura Bassett, ABC News contributor and president of Next Gen America, Christina Cincy Ramirez, ABC News contributor and former Republican congressman from New York, John Katko, and immigration lawyer Leon Fresco. Thank you all for being here with us. And Leon, let's start here with you. You've said that this announcement of these two executive actions today presents many mixed bag outcomes. As you're watching this, what do you see as the potential challenges here as an immigration attorney?
Well, the problem is it does help a very large group of people who are the people who are here, who cross the border unlawfully, but then married a U.S. citizen. So it does help those people. But the people who followed the process and who actually left the country, those people have been in a 26-month line to try to rectify their situation. And they may feel like those people that are here already cut in front of them in the line, and now we're going to make them wait much longer. Same thing with the issue with the DACA kids, which is as the DACA kids are able to access the high-skilled visas that this announcement now allows them to do, the people who are currently accessing those visas may say, well, now I have more competition for those visas. So you may see challenges both by state attorney generals, but also by some of these other legal immigrants who will say, this announcement actually hurts me. And so that might be a different change than what happened. But this undoubtedly does help also hundreds of thousands of people. So this is the mixed bag that I was talking about.
Those are all incredibly important points, right? People raising their hands saying, I followed the rules, and now I'm not next in line. I'm further down the line. Christina, to you, could this be seen, though, as potentially Biden trying to appease the progressive Democrats who were unhappy with these asylum executive actions that we saw just 2 weeks ago?
Absolutely. And he should have to appease them. They are part of his coalition. And the majority of Americans support this action. There's actually a nuanced viewpoint on immigration in this country. People understand that we have built an immigration system that has been willing to accept undocumented labor, but not their full humanity. And so that has come really at the breaking point with seeing people that have married U.S. citizens, been here for many, many years, have U.S. citizen children, and still cannot legalize their status. And that's why this is overwhelmingly popular and why you saw a lot of progressives standing behind him, thanking him for this action, because Congress has not acted and showing that he's going to have a more nuanced approach on immigration than just seal the border like Donald Trump has.
Interesting. And Laura, Republicans, including Donald Trump, they are calling this a mass amnesty policy. In fact, Senator Ted Cruz went so far as to accuse Democrats of trying to buy votes. So what are your thoughts?
Of course, that's not what's happening. The election is in November. And so even the 500,000 people that this helps, and we're talking about spouses of American citizens who've already been living here for 10 years, all it means is that they don't have to go to another country to apply for citizenship and then be potentially separated from their spouse for up to 10 years. They certainly still have to go through a process here. They still have to follow the rules, and they won't be naturalized by November. And so I think it's just a lot of bluster on that point on the right.
Right. They won't be able to vote in November. Some speculation that maybe this is a Democrat vote down the line. But to your point, they wouldn't be able to vote in November. And John, today, White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre was asked if this was a counterbalance to the president's recent asylum restrictions. And she said that Biden is doing this because we have a broken immigration system. And John, I mean, I know that you worked right in El Paso on the border as a prosecutor. You've seen this play out over the years. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on this. And I think the mixed bag stuff is exactly why President Biden didn't do it before this. And the reason he did it now was strictly because it's a political issue, and he's trying to solidify his base, as Christine said. But here's the thing. Those cartels and the coyotes, they all watch every little nuance of immigration policy. And every time they get positive news like this, they use it to recruit more people to the border. So I think he's flirting with fire here. Immigration's a terrible issue for him right now. And to bring us to the forefront at this time, I think is politically dicey for him. We'll see how it plays out. But, you know, you got to balance this against stories like we heard from New York City today, an illegal alien that was arrested for a terrible, brutal rape of a 13-year-old girl. And so when those issues are popping in the media, the last thing you want to do is raise more issues, which you could have raised 3.5 years ago, that might inflame it. So I think he's flirting with fire here.
Certainly. All right, John, Laura, Christina, and Leon, thank you so much for being here with us today.